there. We live?
No.
No, go to dashboards. There. All right.
It's coming on.
Welcome, everybody. This is Adam Huber,
This is Shelly Gaddis.
Shelly Gaddis, Jen Kolb, and we are live for Marketing Monday. Tabletop noise and everything. Shelly and I just had a really interesting discussion about lav mics versus like regular podcast microphones. She was wrong. Just really wanted to point that out there. All right, so for you guys who are watching this and wondering what is going on here, Shelly and I host a little podcast called Marketing Monday, in which we interview people and talk to people who might have some marketing questions or just general business information. This is not meant to be, we are not trying to label ourselves as marketing experts. We just mostly want to get to know our guests and get to know their story and try and help them out as much as possible. And the entire genesis of this podcast was because of a little business here that was local called The Bakery. Was an entrepreneurial group. I'm pretty sure you're familiar with The Bakery.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
And they used to do this thing every Monday called Marketing Monday, where it was kind of a roundtable discussion. People would come in with any marketing issues that they might have had, and everyone could just kind of add their 2 cents. Well, Shelly and I really wanted to get plugged back into the entrepreneurial community, and we decided that Marketing Monday was a really great way to do that. It was a really good like melting pot of ideas and people and businesses, with just a little bit of a twist, which is that we just have singular guests on, and then we just kind of walk through everything with them on it. So with that being said, we have the lovely Jen Kolb here. Would you mind telling
Hi.
people who you are and what you do? And
well, my name is Jen Kolb. I am working on starting a business called The Kitchen.
The Kitchen.
And The Kitchen is similar to
The
what
Bakery.
The Bakery was, which
Oh.
is an entrepreneurial space. But The Kitchen specifically is focused on women. So our whole thing is that we will be a co-working space and also a community space. And so our focus will be on doing anything we can to help women, you know, whether they are entrepreneurial or not, kind of meet them wherever they're at in life and provide services and community to lift each other up and build each other up and to help each other do better.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So what about, you having issues?
Yeah, somebody's saying, can we double check sound is on? Can somebody comment and let us know if we got good sound here? Shoot Adam a message.
You know what? We're just going to continue on and
Sure.
see if
Pretend like nothing's happening.
pretend nothing's happening. Because I checked all the microphones beforehand and everything was working just
'Kay.
fine.
All right, let's roll with it.
So, anyways, what about The Kitchen? Why did you decide to do women? And like, what about that space really calls to you?
Sure. So really the need for the space kind of came from a lot of personal experience. And I noticed that I used to work in the construction and home building industry.
Really?
I was a kitchen designer.
Mm.
And
Oh,
see
man,
what,
I
see,
should-
see what she did there?
I should show you a picture of our kitchen. It's a
there you go.
disaster.
Yeah, I can still do it.
Uh-huh.
But it was a very male-dominated industry, and it became abundantly clear to me that my needs as a woman and specifically a mother were really different than most, men's needs. And I just recognized that the systems that were in place were really kind of set up to work for people who had a man at work and a woman at home, and not recognizing that obviously women have come a really long way since the days where that's all we did was stay home and raise
just
the
a
kids.
little bit.
Right.
And, things just haven't really progressed with that when it came to our workplaces. So I wanted to kind of create this opportunity for women that would say like, hey, we recognize that you have these unique specific needs and we're going to meet you where you're at and we're going to take care of them so that you can continue on doing your thing without having to deal with all these barriers.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Do you mind if we dive into this
Yes,
just a little
please
bit more?
do, because I knew this was going to go here, and I'm cool with it.
Well, good. I'm sure glad.
Yeah, so
Because
I want to hear your perspective on it.
Yeah, I want to be these are the types of conversations. Just kind of, we had Vani Harari on last week.
Yep.
And Vani and I, we didn't ever get into any of these talks on air
Sure.
for obvious reasons, but he and I have really amazing talks about racial issues,
Okay.
like racism and just like all that kind of stuff. He's one of the very few people that I know that I can talk to about that kind of stuff. And there's no tension.
Totally.
It's just more about information. And I always try to view things like this as informational rather than just kind of like judgment passing type of thing, right?
Absolutely.
So what do you see like going forward, the workplace hopefully adapting to for women entrepreneurs? Well, not necessarily women entrepreneurs,
Sure.
I guess, but
just
like
women in general.
just women
yeah,
in general.
Working women. I think the biggest need that we have right now is flexibility. There's so many jobs now that have the opportunity to be remote. You really don't have to be tied to a desk. You know, obviously there's those that are by nature always going to be, you have to be at a retail location or a restaurant or at a hospital where if you're working in the medical industry. But by nature and with technology, there's just so much opportunity for people to work from home or work from wherever they need to.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think to give employees that option would be like 1 in 1A. If people were able to say like, hey, I need to stay home with my kid today because I've got to, take care of them as well, but I need that flexibility. I also need that understanding that this is something that I have to take care of. You don't get to just walk away from mom duties. I think that possibility for flexibility is the biggest thing.
So in my world, the roles are actually kind of reversed
Okay.
a little bit.
Sure.
So my wife, Jess, actually has your traditional job where she has to go into the office every day, kind of a set time because
Sure.
it's what's expected.
Yep.
Then work to a certain time because that's what's expected. Whereas I have my own business now and primarily work from home.
Sure.
And one of the things that I noticed that was refreshing and also difficult for me and kind of gave me a glimpse into like what it could possibly be like for a woman who is trying to advance her way through corporate structure or whatever,
Right,
but
right.
then has the needs of being a mom at home, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is the thing that every parent is familiar with, which is a sick kid at home.
Absolutely.
Kid gets sick. What do you have to do? You have to take off time from work, go home, and then take care of that kid.
Yep.
And being able to work remotely, which is mostly what I do now, that's kind of what what I end up not picking the slack up on, because I don't want to like make it seem like
Right. Right.
it's that I have to do that, but that's what I end up kind of doing now.
Right. You're kind of able to take charge in that situation
Right.
because of your flexibility.
Right.
Yeah.
So I can see just in general, maybe not even just women, but like
Mhm.
a dad being able to say, listen, like I got to go home and like take care of my kid, but I
Yes.
can still work. Like
Right.
there's still a couple of hours a day that I can put in.
Yeah.
But the other amazing thing about Jess, and I'll just shout her out on this because she is awesome, is that she does recognize that being home with a sick kid for 5 days in a row is awfully tiring.
Absolutely.
And you can still get some work done, but you're just not as focused as what you
right.
normally are. And so she'll say, hey,
Yeah,
I'll just
I
take a
got
day off of
this.
work
Yeah.
and like come home and help you out a little
Yeah.
bit.
That's great.
So what do you chime in here, because like I'm kind of interested in talking more about this as well.
I mean, this is something that's been around forever, right? Like, this is kind of the age-old, I'm going to throw the word out there, so the age-old sexism debate, right? Like,
Mhm.
does mom stay home with kid when somebody gets sick? Does dad stay home? And the reality of it is, at least we found, I mean, we have 4 kids. I think most people know that, from 15 down to 5. And the reality of it is, it has always been much more difficult for my husband to take time off to be home with a sick kid than it has been for me. Now, there's probably a lot of factors that play into that, part of it being, the jobs that I have held and that sort of thing. I mean, but the reality of it is, he works in a very man-dominated field, the car industry, same as you do.
Mm-hmm.
And if he goes up to his boss or the people in his industry and say, hey, my kid's homesick today, what's going to happen by most of those 65-year-old men?
Mm-hmm.
That is not going to be like, oh, go take
Yeah.
care of your child. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
And so I really think that a lot of that has started to change. It's something that honestly has been a gigantic struggle in our marriage for a number of years. And it's only been since she's been around, really, that this has become less of a struggle because it's becoming more acceptable for dads to be home with their kids. And that really, it just hasn't been there. So from that perspective, as far as doing what you're doing, I think it's finally getting to a point where it is
Absolutely.
okay for dads to be a little bit more involved. But it's an entire generation switch. Like, it's
Right.
just like my dad and his dad, like, what? They would have never taken a day off to stay home with the kids so mom could go to work. Like,
Yeah.
that's just not
Right.
acceptable in that
Right.
world. So, I mean, having a space with what the kitchen is doing, it's the whole idea of needing to still have that place for where people understand that, where you can be able to advance yourself and still understand that you have other commitments as a mom, as a wife, as a whatever, because the reality of it is the great majority of the co-working spaces are either male dominated, or the ones that have been around here, or the ones that I've seen other places anyway when I've traveled, they're either male dominated or they're not accepting to the fact that you might be in a phase of life where you have children and you have other commitments. And so you're not always going to come to that co-working space dressed in your Converse and jeans and, you know, be able to hold business meetings or whatever. You might have a kid that has to come along for the day or whatever because something else happened. Or you might need to be there for an hour or two, or you might need to have an actual business meeting with a juice box and a laptop sitting there because that's what happens. I mean, you know, with Hood, so I don't know if you knew this, but I do copy editing for Hood too, right? And Steph just posted the other day and said, well, that was a first. I just wiped a butt while I was on a conference call with somebody because her daughter had to be at the office with her that day because of something that happened with daycare or whatever. And so she still had to take a conference call. And fortunately,
goes
kid
on,
walks
right?
in, you need to wipe a butt. You got to wipe a butt.
Yeah.
You know,
Butts
and
need wiping.
and
Right.
you,
Like-
I'm sure you've experienced that from home. But
Yep.
the beauty of the kitchen is that something like that would be welcomed and embraced at the kitchen, and it's the whole idea of everybody helping each other out in those moments.
Right.
So one little hack that I'll give for people who are working from home real quick. And then there's like another piece that I would like to ask you about, and a thought piece that I had read here probably about a year ago.
Okay.
Little hack, technical hack for you guys that are working at home. Anybody at this table, doesn't matter. If you're working from home, you have to take care of kids. It is not fashionable, but go and buy yourself a trucker headset because they have by far the best noise canceling on the market. You can be on a conference call and be doing your dishes, cooking dinner, doing whatever. People on the other line would have absolutely no idea what is
Like
going
the
on.
ones that have the little like thing that
Absolutely.
come down in front.
Yep.
Seriously?
Yes,
like
I guarantee you it is. You could be doing whatever, and they cannot hear anything in the background.
Interesting.
Now, it'll still pick up on. It's meant to pick up on voices, right?
Yeah.
So
They're still gonna hear the little voices. in
they'll
the
still
background, but-
hear the voices in the
yeah.
background, but it's so diminished and muted that it's not as jarring as it is if you're just talking on a regular phone. And also, I'm just going to go ahead and say that if you're doing conference calls and stuff like that, God bless you if you're still holding your phone up to your ear because, like,
Oh my
just
God.
get some earbuds.
How do
It is-
people do it?
I couldn't do it.
I don't know.
So now the thought piece that I'd read here probably about a year ago, there was a really big debate. It still is. It's still ongoing, but it had fired up about the wage gap between men and women. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say, being ignorant to most of these problems that pop up and get talked about a lot, I was just kind of, my mind went to, is this a thing, or is it something that it's just there for the media to bring up and stir up and make a big deal out of it, even though it may or may not actually exist? And that's not me trying to diminish what's out there. It's just more of like, how are you supposed to know if you're a male? And not only that, but I'm not in the corporate world, so like
Right.
it's just not a thing that comes up. Now my wife, on the other hand, she's been pretty much paid exactly what her male counterparts have normally been paid. But the piece that I read was kind of explaining how that wage gap might have actually happened or why it does happen.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it was pretty neutral, and it offered a piece of insight in there that I had never thought about, which was that if you're a business and you have a woman who's pregnant and then is higher up and like the business really depends on her, and she's pregnant, now what happens is because of doctor's visits, which are constant, and then there's the maternity leave and everything like that, normally it's not the intention of the business to say, oh, well, you know, you got pregnant, so we got to automatically cut your pay, right? Like we can't give you as much of a pay raise. What they think was actually happening was, pull up all the stats you want. I'm not gonna.
I mean, we don't need to get into that, but I mean, this is the only reason I brought it up is just because I literally just went through all of this, was doing it for another project that I was looking at, and
gotcha.
this is actually from the American survey, so it's a little bit different than the census, but it's gathered in much the same fashion.
Gotcha.
And it's state by state, and so that is specific to Sioux Falls.
Okay.
That's how much of a gap there is.
Can you read it out? I didn't see.
Yeah.
What it said.
So
it was like 56,000 to 40,000.
So the men's average median salary in South Dakota, it says, is $53,488. And the female's average salary is $39,572. In 2017, full-time male employees in South Dakota made 1.35 times more than female employees. And then it goes on to show by, if you dig into it further, it goes in to break it down based upon specific industries or specific types of jobs.
Sure. I'm sure some industries are more so than others. Some are probably a lot less than others. It's probably, I mean, there's so many factors that go into that whole conversation.
Yeah.
And there's a ton. I mean, and I've personally experienced some of that myself going into what you were just talking about as far as like having to take time off and like that sort of thing. Like I was very specifically excluded from being in a leadership program because I had young children at home. And when the supervisor that was supposed to have put me into that program, like I was asked to be in it, and then magically I wasn't in it anymore. And I found out later through other stuff that was the reasoning behind it, and that there was male counterparts who put into it because they were looked at as being able to put their full selves into their career instead of having to divide their career between home life and work life.
Correct.
So that was kind of what this that's kind of what this thought piece was kind of getting into was, again, I'm going to go ahead and make the assumption, and I think we can probably all agree that there probably isn't too many people who run companies that are going to look at a woman and say, well, you're pregnant, so you're automatically just going to make less.
I don't know if we agree on that.
Okay. You think that's an actual conversation
I think
that would
there's
happen?
plenty of people out there that are very discriminatory when it comes to pregnancy.
So the thought piece was basically looking at it from a view of if you had a male employee that had to take 3 months off and had to leave, I don't know, once every 2 weeks for a doctor's visit, you know, let's just say take half a day off, whatever that might be, you would still be conflicted on being able to say, you know what, you put in just as much effort and work as your peers, you should get just as much of a raise as them. Taking away the whole aspect of like children, being pregnant and everything like that, if you had an employee that was taking that much time off, it would be just very difficult to justify that to everyone else as to why they would get it.
Can I chime in on that real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
The thing is that like you can't take that out of the equation. That's the problem.
Right.
Because women have to have the babies. Like, I mean, if we could just say like, nope, well, and this is happening in real life, we could just say like, nope, we're not going to have babies anymore because I don't want to make less money than a man. I don't want to step away for this many months. Like, that'd be great if we could do that in reality. But like the reality is you can't.
Yep.
That is always a factor.
You could have 2 babies if you wanted to, but like
that's
a whole different discussion.
There's so many aspects to that as well, but still, like
I want to make
it
really
never actually take out of the equation.
Really, really clear. I'm not saying that we can't that we should discount that.
Absolutely.
I'm just saying, like,
right.
just giving that as a
Right.
as an instance. So the conversation, the other part of that was then switching over to, well, then why aren't we giving a consideration towards that's just what has to happen? Like, you can't, in your situation, you can't just look at someone and say, well, because they're gone for however many, you're gone for however many days because of other priorities that should take the priority over everything else. It doesn't mean that when you're here, you're not giving it your all, and
Right.
like you're not working just as hard. And so coming from someone who has never gone into or experienced any of that, it was kind of like, oh, okay, well, that's just interesting aspect to look at it. Like, I just simply looked at it as, well, you're both there, you're both working, you both have the same tenor, like you both have been there the same amount of years. Like, what's the issue? Like, I don't understand.
I think, one of the things that I think would be interesting to bring up, and I think that it's starting to happen a little bit more, but it's the whole concept of how Lemonly, our friend John Meyer, I want to bring him into this for a little bit. Like, have you ever researched how Lemonly hires? You probably have. Have you ever researched this?
No.
So, and I've seen other businesses start to go this way a little bit more. I think Chelsea's does some of this as well when she goes into her hiring, but it's really based upon, these are like your top 10 factors, rank them in importance for you. And then they build a customized job offer and job plan around that. And it's reviewed every so often, every year, 2, 3, whatever, or when there's a major life change. So similar to when you sign up for new benefits and you have that like change period at work or whatever, when you can change your elections. Why aren't employers doing the same kind of thing, right? So like if you're in a phase of life where you're in your early to mid 20s and you're super career focused and you're super like, you don't give a crap about time off at that point because you don't need it, but you care more about pay because you're trying to bring a nest egg, or you care more about, I don't know, going out to being able to take a trip or what, whatever is important to you in your aspect. You build this customized work plan around that. And it's the whole idea. The reason I started researching this was around the whole idea of work remote, because that is one of the things that they play into it. Like, is it important to you to be able to have that flexibility to be able to work remote? And if that's super important to you, then we're going to put some money into your salary bowl of, we're going to invest in the equipment and the tools and everything you need to be able to work remotely. But if employee B over here, if that's not important to them, but it's way more important to them to have an extra, 3 days of vacation because they're going to go to whatever, then everybody gets the same package total per se comparatively in the job, but it doesn't have to come in the form of a dollar amount. It might come in whatever's important to you.
Yep.
So I think that's the big difference, because you could have plenty of dads who say, it's important for me to be able to take off and go to Johnny's soccer game every Thursday afternoon at 3:00. And the fact is that if he was able to do that and had the flexibility to be able to do other things, then you're going to get a much better employee by offering him that same kind of flexibility. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's all about meeting people where they're at.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep. So
Yeah.
that they're able to live up to, or to work up to their full potential.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good
So,
Yeah,
yeah,
great
for sure.
discussion.
So going into that with marketing. So, it's interesting. Like, half of our show already is like nothing marketing related.
talking about something pretty important. And
But this is awesome.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
great to have these conversations for sure.
So going into that, who are you specifically trying to market towards? Like, obviously this is female oriented. Like, that's kind of a no-brainer, I think, for
Right.
anybody in Sioux Falls and understands anything about this.
Right.
But who specifically are you trying to market to? Is it entrepreneurs who need a space to be able to work away from their business? Is it somebody who is looking to rent an office space? Is it somebody who works for a corporate place and wants to be able to have that flexibility to be able to work somewhere else? Like, what is you guys' niche of the community that you're trying to build there?
Yes, to all of those. I would say that the like ideal person for the kitchen is more so of like a psychographic than a demographic, I guess I could say. So like somebody who just really craves connection and community, instead of, so a lot of those people would be people who work from home. That can be a really isolating, lonely thing to do, or business owners, same thing. you know, if you are in one spot all the time by yourself or with, you know, the one or two other people that you work with, it can be really hard to expand that network and to get outside of those surroundings. And so a lot of those people who are wanting to learn more and have conversations like what we're having now, like there's so much work to be done on so many different fronts when it comes to equality in our workplaces. And I think that people who want to be a part of that conversation and who want to work together to kind of like drive that stuff forward, those are the type of people that will identify with the kitchen as well. But then, yeah, there's also, you know, at its heart, it's a co-working space. So entrepreneurs are definitely a big part of that. But more and more, so many employers are offering remote situations. So those people as well. I mean, it really covers a broad spectrum. And I think that the beauty in that is that the more diverse membership base that I have, the more people stand to like benefit from each other too. So
Now, will it be focused or entirely just women?
Women, those that identify as women, I keep saying like trans and non-binary people are welcome as well. Also, if there's a father who's in a situation where they're like, I'm the one who the childcare is falling on me and I really am in a pickle today, I've always said that dads would be welcome if they're on the same mission as what the rest of us are there for too.
Okay.
So it's not exclusive by any means, but it's just meant for women. So
Okay.
yeah.
So there was something that this is really funny that this happened today. I love how life works sometimes. I got a issue of Entrepreneur Magazine, which, by the way, I'm not a subscriber. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but like it just showed up on my
Sure.
doorstep. And
Somebody like prank sent you a subscription to Entrepreneur
who
Magazine.
knows? Everybody knows that once you get a subscription to Entrepreneur Magazine, you've basically made it.
You're like in the club.
you're
now.
in the club.
Right.
But it actually had an article in there about how somebody what he did was he bought a whole bunch of $5 gift cards at Starbucks, and then he would just stay at Starbucks, and then he would walk around and pitch ideas to people and say, hey, if you let me show you my business slides, I'll give you a $5 gift card. And he would just get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people's feedback on his business
Okay.
and he really narrowed down his customer, who his customer was from that. He had an idea of who he thought his customer was. And then after a year of doing this every single day, he really narrowed it down to exactly who he should be marketing it to.
Sure.
And then he went on to have $1 billion business because he figured out who it was.
Such a good idea of, yeah.
Pair that idea with, I was just listening to a podcast, Tim Ferriss's podcast with Bob Iger, CEO of Disney.
Okay.
And they were just talking about WeWork.
Sure.
And that whole, oh wait, no, I'm sorry. That's the wrong episode. It was this very last one with Sam Villa.
Okay.
And they actually got to talking about WeWork and like what happened with WeWork and everything.
The mess of WeWork.
And what Sam had to say was he didn't understand how a business would work where people's primary place where they're at right now is Starbucks. They just go to Starbucks and that's their co-working space, right? How, if something goes wrong with a co-working space, they're just going to go back to Starbucks or go back to working from home.
Right.
And I think he's right to a point. Like,
Yeah.
what you are touching on right now is actually something that I kind of go through. And not only that, but I actually just got messaged last night asking what's an entrepreneurial group that you would recommend that somebody who's new in business go and talk to, because
sure.
he just needs some connection. And I just said, I don't know.
Right. Where do you start?
Yeah. I mean,
there's so many.
There's a couple that I can kind of name off, but I just don't know if it fits the actual timeline where he's at. So I know this is kind of a long answer, but it would be really interesting to just go to Starbucks, Caribou's, Cafea, Queen City and stuff like that, and sit there and just kind of observe people, and then just kind of go out and sit down with a gal who has been there for multiple times a day,
Sure.
Multiple times a week, and say, are you doing this? Are you working remotely? Like, what's kind of like your deal? I'd really like to talk to you about the kitchen.
Sure.
And then I know that's very one-to-one hand combat type of thing,
That's
and I
my
know
kind
it's
of stuff, though.
is it?
Yeah.
That's guerrilla marketing at its core.
Boom, guerrilla marketing.
That's a great idea,
Yeah,
honestly. I
do
really like that
I mean,
idea.
okay, well,
I
I'm
think we
done.
can just be done here now.
We can just go ahead and mic drop that.
I mean, you stole it from Entrepreneur Magazine, but it is a great idea.
I stole it from two different ideas.
It's a hybrid idea.
Yeah, it's a hybrid
Yes.
idea. But the only reason why I think that would be a really interesting way to go about it is because you're really going to be touching on that core person's problem, which is
Right.
connection. I
Right.
think
Right.
more than anything, connection is what makes up a lot of what the value
Absolutely.
in the kitchen or places like that, what they
Mhm.
bring is
Absolutely.
connection. So that's just one idea kind of
Totally.
I had off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. That's a fantastic way of getting out there because honestly, I do think that that's going to be your number one struggle. And I'd love to hear
Sure.
what you feel your struggle has been up to this point in being able to market it because.
Sure.
I mean, you and I met for the first time talking about this like
A long time ago.
August,
I know.
maybe
It's
somewhere
been a long
back then.
time
Like it's
coming.
been quite a while ago.
Mhm.
And even at that point, you had been going after this for a little
Right,
while at that
right.
point because a couple other people, I think I had been told at least 3 or 4 times by other people, like, you should sit down and talk to Jen.
Right.
So, like, you'd been going after this for a while. So, like,
Yep.
6 months later, what do you feel has been your biggest hurdle other than, like, the location and all that kind of
Sure,
stuff? Like, as
sure.
far as marketing and connecting to people and getting people to understand the need and that, what's been your biggest hurdle, do you
I
feel?
think the biggest thing has been educating people, first of all, on what co-working is. Where I, in
Which is
true
so
South
weird,
Dakota fashion,
like,
we are way behind the
jeez.
times on this kind of stuff. And so to explain to someone like, yeah, it's, like an office, you can come work there, but you don't have to, rent out a actual office with walls and doors, and people are just like, mind blown.
It's just crazy
So
to
that's
me.
been the
Makes
biggest
us
thing
sound
to
that
me.
we're
I
like,
know.
we got an outhouse sitting
Yeah.
over there, too.
That
That's what
really
it makes it
honestly it's
sound
been
like.
hard. So
Jeez.
Well, I mean, that was one of the bakery's primary struggles
Yeah.
was to kind of like get people to understand
What it is.
what it even is.
exactly.
And I really don't want to. I hope you don't mind trying to draw too many parallels between the bakery and the
No,
kitchen.
not
Like
at all.
I know you're
not
trying
at all.
to.
I think we both ran on very, very similar concepts, just different niches. So
Mhm.
yeah,
But I think it's important to recognize the fact that you are going and doing like your own thing, and
Mhm.
you're going to evolve and grow that in its own
Definitely.
way.
Yeah.
Like, but like you said, it's pretty parallel.
yeah, it is.
But I mean, that's the struggle with any new business when you are offering something that's really new to an area. That's the main struggle with any business is how do I get people to understand what it even is? And at the end of the day, maybe you don't want everyone to understand what it is because you're not marketing to everyone.
Right.
You're marketing to moms or women entrepreneurs, whatever
Mhm.
that might be. And just as kind of an aside, I don't know why I always end up coming up with this. Hey, sweetie. She, when I had my detailing business, AHD, there was very specific times of the year that I'd honed in on when specifically moms would want their SUVs or their vans done.
Mm-hmm.
It was, I mean, I could
Like
almost
clockwork.
I could almost throw a dart on
Right.
the day, like, and be like, okay, well, right around here is when I'm gonna start getting a bunch of calls.
Sure.
So I would then switch my marketing to start to really hit on those heartstrings of moms and stuff like that, because I'm still gonna get your average person that's gonna want a vehicle to come in and get their car protected and everything like that. But after soccer season, after baseball season, like after traveling season,
Mm-hmm.
like everyone's gone and done that road trip, and then afterwards the
Yeah.
car's just an absolute
Right.
disaster.
The dirty season.
And then the mom's just sitting there stressed out, and she's like, listen, I don't know when I would even have time to do this.
Right.
And don't worry,
Right.
Adam
Here I
Huber's here
am.
to fix your problems. And I mean, it just worked.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I always found that having compassion for their particular situation, I could take a picture of a dirty vehicle, and it's very easy to then judge that person and be like,
yeah.
look at how dirty their vehicle is,
Right.
But instead, come at it from the light of, they're busy. Like, what are they supposed to do?
Looks
Right.
like this.
Yeah, of course your car looks like this. Like, what are you supposed to do? Like, you just got done with a 6-hour travel, and what you're supposed to do what's expected out of society, which is come home and then cook a meal and like all this. When are you supposed to do your car?
Exactly.
Just bring it on down to
Right,
AHD and we'll
right.
just take care of
Bring
that.
it on down.
Bring it
That's
on
perfect,
down.
though. That's perfect, though, because I think, again, that falls into meeting people where they're at, right?
Yeah.
Like, at this point in your life, like, you've got literally everything else on your plate right now, like the work, the kids, the feeding them, the bedtimes, all of this. Like, yeah, where is that
Yep.
hour or two that you're supposed to spend cleaning your car
On
out?
the flip side of that, I was really good at being able to market to the car guy.
Yeah.
And be like,
Yep.
we all know you just want to take your car to the car show and have the shiniest car there. Oh, listen, you suck at it. Bring it down to me. And I can
Meeting
do it
people
way
where they're
better.
at.
You'll have the shiniest car there, and you'll be the envy of the entire car show.
Right.
I mean, the reality of it is Adam just really likes to tell people how much they suck at doing stuff.
No,
That is one of his
they're
favorite.
wonderful at things. I just want to be paid and do better than you.
Right.
That's all. So, all right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of one area. When are you kind of looking to go live with the kitchen thing?
I open a week from today.
Next week?
Next.
Well, we should probably get this dialed
Finally.
in.
Yeah, I need to go. No, we're having our soft opening next week. So I actually have a large handful of members already that are just like dying to get in this space. They've been in it for the long haul. So we're going to soft open a week from today for the members. We're going to host some events that will be open to everyone. And those will start that week as well. And then the following week, starting February 10th, we're going to have our grand opening week. So free co-working. So if you are a woman that wants to come check it out and is interested in what we're all about, we're doing a donation drive. So if you want to bring a book or an art supply for the kids' room or a plant, then you can come and hang out and check it all out. See what it's all
Nice.
about.
All right.
Yeah.
Maybe
Shelley,
I'll have to check it out that
Can
week.
you,
Yeah.
can you start chiming in here into this conversation? Because I feel like I've been dominating the entire conversation.
Well, you have kind of, but
Sorry.
no, I mean, I think I really want to hear more about like what you have had for struggles leading up to this. I
Mhm.
think you and I have stayed in touch, but we haven't really like touched a whole lot
Right.
deep between August and now. So like one of the things that's unique, I think, to Jen and her specific situation is that she did a crowdfunding to be able to get it to this point. And I think that's not something that a ton of places in Sioux Falls do, especially for something like this, right? So she doesn't have like buy my CD kind of a thing. Like this
Right.
is something very different. So talk on that and some of the
Sure.
things that you've gone through. I know you've gone to multiple real estate agents and banks and all of that kind of stuff that you've had to. I think it'd be really valuable for people watching to be able to hear some of this.
Sure. So a lot of the issues that I faced in getting started were very logistical. So the banks, the building, all that kind of stuff, which I think is a struggle that a lot of people face when they're opening a business. I think there are unique struggles when you're a woman coming up with this like new concept that, you know, again, people are like, what's co-working? So to go to a bank and be like, hey, I have this idea. It's costly up front, but this is what we could do.
So you
And
don't
they're
have to
kinda like,
you don't have to tell me, you don't have to share this if you don't want to, and I'm going to be totally fine if you
Yeah.
say no, I'm not comfortable answering this.
I'll keep grilling her for it.
But were you able to get a loan from a bank with only your name on it?
Yes.
Good
Because
for you.
I'm not married, so that was it.
But even
here's what I will say though, I did have to put up collateral.
Sure.
And so that came from my family. So they were able to support me in that way. Had I gone in without the collateral on there, it just wouldn't have happened.
To be fair,
To be fair.
It-
So,
you
but it is
probably
just
would
my
not
name.
have been able to do that. It doesn't matter
Who you
gender,
are.
race.
Yeah.
or
Well,
anything like that.
Exactly.
this is a whole different conversation, but the only reason I bring it up is I know multiple very successful women
Yep.
in the retail world in Sioux Falls that cannot get a loan from a bank without their husband's signature on
Yep.
it, me included. I
Right.
mean, I ran a
remember
very
hearing that story.
successful business for over a decade, and still the last loan that I ever had my husband's frickin' name on it. Just
Yeah.
to be safe.
Yeah. And I don't think people understand that that kind of stuff happens, but like it
And
does.
it's demeaning to a woman.
Yeah,
Like
it
it's just
is.
it's one of those things. Like saying it's like to me, it's like saying to your kid, I really believe in you, but I'm just gonna follow along afterwards just
Mhm.
because it's still, I'm gonna tell you one thing to your face, but I don't really believe in you.
Yeah.
Right.
And
right.
that's really the horrible undertone of all of it is it's like
Mhm.
it really beats down that confidence in somebody over,
Yeah.
I'm not good enough to do this on my own.
So I got really lucky to get in touch with a female lender, and she's kind of on a really similar life path as me.
Mm-hmm.
I've gone through a divorce. I'm not currently married. I have kids. And so for her to be able to identify personally on that level and know that like, hey, we're still worth something, even though we're not, we don't have a ring on the finger.
Such a ridiculous statement.
It is such a ridiculous statement, but it was like a huge thing.
But that's what
to
it
be
makes
able
you.
to-
But that's what it makes you feel like when you're sitting in front of like all of these
Right.
guys behind huge desks at banks.
Yes.
Because even just finding a female lender,
Was
knowing
hard.
what I know in this town in the commercial space, there are very few
Very few.
female lenders, and I'm almost positive I know who you're talking about.
Probably.
But she is one of the few that has even come up and really tried hard to get a bunch of female
Yes.
clients out there and has really made herself known
Yeah.
in that space rather than just kind of following along behind a male counterpart.
Right.
Counterparts.
Well, and I haven't made it any secret like who I've been working with. I've been working with First Bank and Trust, and what I've encountered there is that so even if you have female lenders, the decisions go up the ladder, right?
Yep.
And typically at the top of the ladder, there's men. And what they've done really, really well is they've said like, hey, we have this initiative internally to do better by women and to our female customers, and they really, really walk the walk there. So
good for them.
yeah, it was
Nice shout out to them.
it ended up being a really pleasant experience. And
That actually isn't who I was thinking. So.
really, good to know. Well,
Oh,
so
it
there's
is growing.
there's a couple good
Yeah,
ones out
that
there now.
makes
It's
me
good
really
to
happy,
know.
Let's give some
actually.
props to. We can't just talk crap about the
Right.
financial institution
Right.
here without saying, you know what?
There's-
Seems like the tide is changing.
That's
Yes,
awesome.
There are some good eggs out there for sure, and it's encouraging for sure. So it's good to know that you can that like the guy that came to you that's like, where do I start? It's good to know that there's people out there that you can be comfortable being like, go start with this person because they really will take good care of you. And
This is and I don't like to try and make this about me, but like just kind of like being comparative. Well,
Right.
somewhat comparative.
Sure.
Sorry. Like
that's okay.
I shouldn't
No,
say
I get it.
it's not super comparative, but this is actually something that I'm going through right now. Is I just emailed a bunch of banks and said, hey, like, I really think we're going to need a line of credit for, what I've got going on. And the only unique twist to that is that I have an international business partner.
Okay.
And some banks, like, they're just not going to they're not
Right.
going to fly with that.
Right.
But it's the first time that I've really sat down and like drawn up a business plan
Sure.
and like done a financial forecast. And I know going into it that, 2 out of 10 might actually say continue on that conversation and want to continue forward with that. And so kudos. The only reason why I bring that up is kudos to you for both of you, honestly, for like going through it and doing it, because that's really tough to do in the first place.
It is. Thank you.
But a lot of people are going to have a struggle with that. So what, if you don't mind, if we stay on this kind of thread, what did you have to do to prepare for something like that? Because that again is like kind of hitting home with me.
Yeah. Probably the same time. I mean, I did a business plan. I mean, so like you said, we met in August and I had been at it for a while already. Like I started working on a business plan a year ago now, and really formulating the idea. So I got as much research since it's pretty bare boned around here when it comes to this industry. I pulled a lot of information from other markets, put together a business plan, did a lot of projections. I did go work with the SBA to get some financial projections. Just really prepared as much as I could on that end before I started talking to anyone. And then I just started going to different people and saying, like, what do you need from me? What are your requirements, and what can you offer me also? And just kind of like going through that process and then finally getting to the right people and where they're like, this is what we need, and we can, and they were willing to work with what I had as well. So it was a really similar process. It's always about finding the right relationship, but then I just came with a business plan pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you hit the nail on the head right there, is like finding the right business partner. I think so many times new businesses go into a relationship with a banker and don't see it as interviewing a person to be on their team, right? They go into it looking that they are in a, what's the word I'm looking for? They're in a position where somebody else has more power than them. What's the word I'm looking for?
Subordinate.
That somebody is they're like, oh, may I please have this? And you know what I mean? But it's not a mutual respect where you're on the same level and you have a good working relationship together.
Man, I would love to have that conversation with a bank where they think that they're higher up than me.
But but in reality, how many businesses do you think go into that? Like, I think a lot of businesses go to
Couldn't
a
tell ya.
bank for any, and I mean, I think, I don't know, that might be a generational thing as well. But there's a lot of people, I think, that go to a bank and have this assumption that they're doing me a favor
Right.
by giving me this
Right.
this business, or by them loaning me this money, and I owe them something and I need to do, blah 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 blah, because that's the way that the banking industry has marketed themselves for all of these years. And I can honest to God say that for the first 5 to 7 years of having my business, that was exactly how I felt. I mean, in every single banking, I had 4 banking relationships within 5 years with our store, because it was horrible. Like, we were in these relationships that were either like didn't work well for a small business because they just didn't understand that small of a business and how to help us grow at that point. Didn't understand retail and didn't understand the ins and outs, because trying to finance retail and cash flow retail is way different than trying to do other businesses. And so the money in and the money out looks really risky to some businesses or to some banks, unless you understand that. Or the last part of it was, we had at least one of the business relationships was so incredibly sexist. And even to the point where my husband got involved and was like, I can't believe you're talking to my wife this way. And then looking at me and saying, why are you letting him talk to you this way? Because, they looked at themselves as, they would talk to my husband so much more respectfully in a meeting than they would talk to me in that meeting, because I was his little wife that was just had this little hobby business, that was that was happening. And as much as we don't want to admit that happens, it really does happen. I mean, that was 7 years ago that happened to me, maybe 8. But I mean, it happens all the time. And at that point, I'm sure at that point we were really close, or possibly even over $250,000 in sales a year at that point. But this was just my little side hobby.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think many times we just don't respect ourselves and what we bring to the table enough going into that conversation with a bank to say, what are you bringing to the table? Here's what I'm bringing to the table, and how can we be partners? And kind of interviewing them the same way that you would interview an accountant or anybody else that you're going to have on your team in business.
On that thread,
Yeah.
what would be or is important to you with the relationship with your bank in something like this?
Sure. So I think, I guess I kind of figured out more what I don't want from a bank. And that was, first of all, I wanted them to believe in my business. I didn't want to feel like I was like coming from behind, basically being like, help me. So these guys really were like a cheerleader for me, and they were like, this is really cool. This is going to work. Like, it's going to be great. And so that was important to me. But I also didn't want to work with somebody who only saw value in like things that fit into a specific little box. And so that really kind of went hand in hand there. And that was important to me. And
well, this is interesting for me because I haven't reached out to First Bank and Trust at all about my particular situation, but because the product that we offer in the industry that we're in is totally different than what's out there right now.
Sure.
If they're willing to think outside of the box, then
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to have to reach out to them and just say,
it's always worth a shot.
Yeah. I mean, I'm fully expecting going into it and being told no.
Yeah.
Like,
and that's the other thing
times.
too, is like you go into it with hopefully some thick skin, knowing that like you could just get totally shot down and that they're going to laugh you out of there. But
I'm part German, thick skin comes with
same
it.
Here. Same here. So
let's try and squeeze in like one more marketing question before, because I'm assuming we're probably pretty close.
We actually are. Well, we started a little late today.
Yeah.
So
all right. So one more marketing question,
Sure.
which you had sent a message to the group, which was, how do you transition from like web-based marketing to kind of more social media type marketing?
Other way around.
Other way around?
Yes, because I've got this amazing organic social media following that I have literally not put a dime into. And it's just like, I think the message has really been resonating. But my next hurdle here is how am I translating this into my website and into my email marketing and kind of carrying that excitement over.
I'm going to ask a question just from the
Mhm.
beginning on this. Have you asked those people how they want to be communicated with?
No.
Do that.
Okay.
I would absolutely say that. Like, so I think we come into this with assumptions on marketing, like we have to have email marketing and we
Sure.
have to have whatever. But if that's not how your particular, if you feel like you already have a very loyal community surrounding you that has given you that kind of organic marketing and that organic, they're telling their friends and that sort of a thing,
Mhm.
then ask them what they want. You know
Okay.
what I mean? Ask them
Yeah.
if they want to be texted instead of emailed. Ask them if they want to, have you do live Q&As once a week, or if
Okay.
they want webinars, or,
Sure.
whatever. Start this from the human level. We keep talking
Yeah.
about, like, I feel
I
like
like
this gets
that.
brought up pretty quickly, or pretty frequently, but ask them. Like, I think it's important just to ask what their feedback is. Don't try to, like you just said, you didn't want somebody else to like fit into these narrow little boxes.
Mhm.
Don't expect your customers to fit into that narrow little box as well, because the people who are using your space, they're the ones that are going to be telling other people to come, right?
Totally.
Like, once you have that super loyal base of people, and if you treat them really well, they're the ones that are going to start bringing more people into the space, and that's how you're going to grow and nurture that community.
Yeah, I
Yep.
love that. Yep.
I actually did this with my former business as well. Someone had asked me that question. Do you know how your customers want to be communicated to? And I said, well, no.
Not really.
So I just did a Google sheet
Okay.
and just said, hey, I'm really interested. Like, I've been talking to you kind of like this.
Sure.
Like, do you prefer social media? Do you prefer text? Do you prefer calls? Do you prefer email? And it was completely not what I thought it was going to
Really?
be. Yeah.
Okay.
Email, it didn't win out, but email was way up there.
Okay.
And the only thing I've noticed with email, and my goodness, there's people out there that do email way better than I could ever think about. So
Right.
I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm email expert, but all of us, we just get inundated with tons and tons of emails every single day.
Right.
And it's mostly just very non-specific marketing jargon that it has no life to it
Absolutely.
for the most part.
You can tell it's like following a formula kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So I really enjoy when I'm able to putting personal twists on stuff and trying to make it more of like a communication or a conversation,
Okay.
than it is about just a one-way conversation. Because if I wanted to, I could do a podcast where I just sit here and I just talk to this wall
Right.
and I'm just, my back's to you. Like, how fun is this, right? Like,
Sure.
that's not very much fun.
Right.
But now, look at how great of a time we've had where I'm facing you, we're talking, I'm learning from you, and
Mhm.
maybe you're learning from me. I don't know. But, it's really easy to get into the one-way conversation when you're not sitting there and talking with the person and not directly communicating with them. And so that's where, unfortunately, most on social media, but especially it seems like email marketing, just because of the timings and
Sure.
it is expected that you don't have to reply back to an email for a couple of days. You don't
Sure.
have to. Whereas someone comments on a post, it's
You
just
better
kind
be
of
there.
socially accepted that you better like
Yeah.
communicate back. You could end up finding out that they would really love to have a huge messenger group
Sure.
and just
Yeah.
communicate that way.
I
It's
love
just,
that idea.
It's
I
kind of
think-
up in the air.
Yeah, absolutely. I think really
And-
catering to them is important. So.
And I guess my 2 cents for you on this, Jen, is that you're not trying to communicate to the masses. Like,
Mhm.
really, really remember that through this
Mhm.
entire process is you have a very specific group of people that you're trying to meet their needs for. And it's okay to not feel like you have to market to everybody
Sure.
out there.
Sure.
Like, don't feel like you have to hit every single woman in this town
Right.
because the kitchen's marketing to all women. Like, your marketing can be specific to a very, very specific group of people and value their input. You're going to get a few other people from outside of that demographic just because, again, they're talking to other people and they're pulling other
Sure.
people in. But that doesn't mean that your marketing is going to be going specifically to all of those people on the outside. You're marketing to the people that are in that very specific bowl or circle of people,
Yeah.
and then letting them do the rest of the marketing out from there for you by how you treat them and how you speak to them and how you engage them and how you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So your events, everything doesn't have to fit everything. It needs to fit those people's needs.
Right. Yeah, no, and that's a great point, just because, for my business in general, I've tried to make a really good point of not trying to be everything for everybody, because,
Right.
in
And
a
you can
space
be
like this,
empathetic to the people that are
Right.
that maybe aren't within your niche, and maybe try to direct them to resources and other
Right,
places
absolutely.
not out there. But that doesn't mean that you have to change who you are just to fit everybody's needs.
Totally. I love that.
Actually, what she just described is one of my favorite books. Do you like to read actual books, or are you like an audiobook
I'm
person?
an audiobook person for
Okay.
sure.
I would
I
like.
wish I could
Uh,
fall asleep.
have you read or listened to the book Purple Cow?
No, I've never even heard of it.
Oh, that's a great suggestion for that.
Well,
Okay.
you literally just said the concept of it.
That was one of the first book that I had my students read last year.
Okay, I will check that out.
I will gift that book to you
I was gonna
I
say
love
it.
I have
I
it sitting
love
in my
it.
library too.
because it's a pretty short
It
listen or
is.
read. Like, it's not very long.
Okay,
But what she just said,
sure. I'll make sure to try and have that in the library at the kitchen too.
yeah,
Then.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a
pretty
great book.
much you can't really go wrong if you buy pretty much every single Seth Godin book. Tim Ferriss, maybe Gary Vee, I would say, is probably up there, and then Maxwell.
Yeah.
John
Maxwell. I mean, if you were just to have a library of just kind of like
Right,
that, and
right.
then I'm going to go ahead and just throw my boy Jocko Willink in there, because leadership style, extreme ownership, and the dichotomy of leadership,
Okay.
two of the best leadership books I've ever
I've
read.
heard good things. My boyfriend just got done reading that one, so
Pick it up.
he
and
said
read
good
it.
things. Okay, cool.
Actually, I just gifted that extreme ownership book to someone else who he has a detailing shop, and he just brought on employees. And I said, listen, you need to listen to this book, because it's one of the rare times I will actually say that the audiobook is better than
Okay.
the paper version.
Cool.
So I don't know. But not to be sexist, but it's kind of like a guy thing, because
Sure.
they're
Doesn't
Navy,
it have kind of like I was gonna say like
Navy
a military
SEAls,
twist
and
to it? Yeah.
they're like ex
yeah.
trainers and everything, so
Sure.
they've got the gravelly voice,
Yeah.
and they sound exactly like how you think commandos would sound.
Yes.
It's just awesome to listen to, and they have great stories. But
Cool.
by far and away, probably one of the best leadership books I've ever read.
Okay.
And I've read a few. I wouldn't
Sure.
say that I'm well versed in it, but
Okay.
yeah. So, anyways,
Love it.
All right, so
Good
last
stuff.
few minutes, you get to talk about whatever you want
Oh
to
my
talk about. So
goodness.
you can tell us
You're gonna
about
put
your
me on the
kids.
spot
You can
here.
tell
well, I mean,
us
you could have been
about
on the spot for the
your
last
Yeah.
lunch. You can, or you can talk about your business. Whatever you want to talk about.
I mean, gosh, I love that your little one's here with us right now. I think it's very on brand for our discussion today.
You
right?
know, it just kind of worked out this way. It has
Sure it did.
never. It has
You
never.
didn't intentionally get
Yeah.
her sick or anything.
It has never happened this
Yeah.
entire time that
Right.
we even had to walk into this. But you know,
I love it. We've been here's what I could talk about for a few minutes. We've had the influenza running through my house, like my whole extended, like my parents, my sister, her kids, everybody. Like it's made its way through all of us. So I have since before Thanksgiving, I have either been sick or had a sick child, and like trying to start a business at the same time. It's been
Easy.
insane. It is insane. Yeah, it's so easy.
Just
Totally
a
easy.
breeze.
But what's been really cool about it, though, is that like I do mostly work with women. I meet with a few men here and there too. But like if I've had to like reschedule a meeting, everyone's like, "It's fine, I get it. It's totally cool." I missed one meeting that I had to go pick up my daughter at school, and I totally forgot that I had somebody coming by, and she was so understanding, and like you get like that guilt where you're like,
Yeah.
"Oh my gosh, here I took off on mom duty for 1 minute and like
Right.
dropped the ball." But gosh, having sick kids is like just kind of can throw your whole world in a tizzy. I understand that. I would love to I have like this, big, hairy, audacious goal that I would love to set up some kind of like clinic, basically, that's like a daycare, so that if you have sick kids, they could get like one-on-one care from healthcare professionals. And like, I just think that that'd be something that would be a total game changer for working parents, like moms and dads.
Well, I think we'll see a lot of evolutions in everything, in everyday life. Because I think you are right in the fact that remote work is becoming more and more popular.
Totally.
And let's just face it, folks, working from home with a sick kid just sucks.
It's
like
so hard.
I will go ahead and say Benjamin, who's my 3.5-year-old,
Okay.
every time he's ever been sick,
Yeah.
he's a breeze to watch.
Right,
Like
right.
he's got a fever, you know, you just kind of like, I don't know, do
Yeah.
fever things.
Right.
It hasn't been projectile vomiting or projectile diarrhea
That is nice.
going up
Yes.
against the wall. Like it's been
It's
super easy.
coming.
Oh yeah.
You spoke
You
it
literally
loud,
just
and
jinxed
now
yourself.
Jonathan,
it's coming.
I can guarantee you Jonathan will break that whole mold because that's what he's done this entire 3.5 months. But anyways,
Yes.
anything else you want to talk about or
No,
shout
this
out?
has been a great conversation. I'm glad we kind of got to like run the whole gamut here. So
Yeah.
Yeah, this
been good.
is that's how we roll around here.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Adam Huber, Shelly Gaddis, Jen Kolb.
Yes, it's
Thanks for coming on.
fantastic.
Yeah, thank you
Appreciate it.
guys.
Yeah. Oh, where can people find you?
Yeah.
Oh, my website is thekitchensf.com. I'm on Facebook, Kitchen SF or The Kitchen SFSD, and then Instagram kitchen_SF.
Awesome.
Yes.
And where's the actual location that's
Oh
opening?
yeah, the building, which opens a week from today. We are on South Racket Drive, right off of 49th and Louise. So we're like right behind Mini Critters, if you're familiar with
Oh,
the
yeah.
area there.
Perfect.
So, yeah.
It's
Awesome.
right by my gym. Maybe I should just like.
right by a lot of things. It's really easy to get
Wow,
to.
how convenient.
Right.
It is. I know. Maybe I'll
You should be a
just
regular.
knock on their door at 6:30 in the morning.
Love it.
Hey, can I come work?
Don't see an issue with it at
Hey,
all.
That
24/7
I was just gonna
access,
say,
yeah.
are you gonna have 24/7
Yep,
access?
if you're a full-time member, you get 24/7 access. There's we've got a whole system getting
Nice.
set up.
That
so.
actually is pretty
Yeah.
brilliant, honestly. Like,
Yeah.
because that is a difficulty, honestly. Like finding coffee shops or other places
Totally.
like that to work from around a family schedule. You know,
right.
after the kids go to bed or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. All right.
Cool. Thank you guys.
Peace out, Brussels sprout.
Atta girl.